October 14th, 2019. Joe here at Simple Life Show. SimpleLifeRemedy.org is a website. Appreciate everybody for joining me today on this Monday. And remember to always like, subscribe, share, and do all that good social media stuff there for the conservative voices. If you like anything that you hear or anything like that, any ideas that I might give you or anybody else for that matter, make sure you support them in any way possible. And it's not just money, just mainly we're looking for you to follow our stuff and give feedback and stuff like that, stuff that you want to hear, stuff you want to talk about. Definitely drop me a line and I'll make a video about it. Absolutely. This is what I'm looking for. Because everything kind of goes around in a circle, and I just wanted to kind of always circle back to what is really important. So today, I'm not going to be talking about the impeachment of the president because we all know that's not going anywhere. The president is not going anywhere. In fact, he's going to win the 2020 election. We all know it. The Democrats are constantly digging themselves in the hole, so we're not going to talk about it. We're going to be really talking about this whole Syria thing, and I want to clear some stuff up because the Middle East is very confusing. And I think that 95% of the mainstream media connoisseurs out there really don't know what's going on. And they kind of just want to jump on the bandwagon every time someone wants to throw Trump under the bus. And of course, we've seen that over and over the past week. We have seen Trump, kind of being portrayed as an oafish clown, doesn't know what he's doing, not a good leader, stuff like that. It just keeps going on and on and on. It's ad nauseum until the point I can't even take it anymore. I know that everyone else is having a problem with it too. Excuse me. But that's not really, excuse me, that's not really what I'm doing this video. That's not really what I wanted to talk about. What I really want to talk about is this whole misconception about what's really going on in the Middle East, and the perception that the media actually puts out there for backing something that we weren't really supposed to be doing in the first place. And I believe that the reason why we got off and the fact that we did get out of northern Syria is a good thing overall. Does it have great optics? Absolutely, it does not have great optics, but that's all it really is. It's just optics. At the end of the day, that's all it really is. But we have to remember that the fact that we went over to the into northern Syria was not Trump's fault. Obama actually, if you remember that the whole issue with us going over to the Middle East and getting involved in Syria was considered unconstitutional because we weren't provoked. It had nothing to do with actually protecting the sovereignty and the protection of this country. We were just meddling in more Middle Eastern affairs that we had no business meddling in. Let the UN do it, or just let them do what they're going to do over there. Let's not make it worse. But unfortunately, Obama put us into this position, and even Obama actually finally admitted back in 2016, before he was usurped by the President Trump, even he admitted that he kind of messed up.
As frustrating as it is, there are no easy answers there. No military solution that can eliminate the terrible suffering anytime soon. As president, I made a decision that we should not put American troops into the middle of this increasingly sectarian war. And I believe that is the right decision.
So that was just a short clip of Obama admitting that he was wrong, really. Of course, he didn't really admit that, hey, I messed up. Should have never went to the Syria. But, I'm not trying to point fingers at any one person. What I am trying to do in this video is to set a few things straight. Excuse me. I'm not going to do this whole video over again because I am still a little bit sick and I'm going to be coughing just a little bit, but that's fine. That's not going to change the subject of what we're talking about. So ABC just recently came out with a video here of the slaughter in Syria. Notice how they're using the NLP type stuff. It's slaughter in Syria. All the innocent Kurds are getting killed and all this stuff. We are going to play this clip and we're going to explain kind of what's going on here. One second.
This video, obtained by ABC News, appears to show the fury of the Turkish attack on the border town of Tel Aviv.
A border town bombarded by Turkey's military. This video right here appearing to show Turkey's military bombing Kurd civilians in a Syrian border town. The Kurds, who fought alongside the U.S. against ISIS. Now, horrific reports of atrocities committed by Turkish-backed fighters on those very allies.
So, yeah, that is an explosive video from ABC that just came out, I believe, today. Either that or it was yesterday, I think. But, of course, that was not from the Middle East. That was actually from Kentucky at a military training site. You can see all the tracers there and all that kind of stuff. It really, I mean, you don't even have to be a genius and don't have to have any kind of back knowledge. I mean, all you got to do is just look at the video to tell that's not anywhere in the Middle East. But our geniuses over at the lamestream media, they don't really want to vet anything before they just put it out there. It doesn't matter whether it's true or not. It's whoever has the first to post. And that is the most important thing right now. It's not really vetting anything. It's not really what's truthful. And that's why I'm making this video, because there's a lot of misconceptions about what's going on. Now, one of the biggest things that I have actually seen is that when it comes to the Kurds, a lot of the photographs are from the YPG, right? The YPG is basically the liberation group for the Kurds. Now, what a lot of people see in the news is very similar to this. It's very similar to the female fighters over there, and of course, who can't be behind that, right? The female fighters over the Kurds and stuff like that. That's really the only information that we get as a nation over here in the U.S. when it comes to this whole issue. So we are very limited. We have very limited information. We are a low information type of society, and that's an unfortunate thing, but that's just the truth. But I want to actually put a lot of this stuff straight. So really what's going on in the Middle East is that the Turkey is not really having a war with the Kurds. That is what the mass media wants you to believe, that the Kurds are just, they're at risk, and they actually help to destroy ISIS. Now, they did have a hand in it. They did help, but a lot of that stuff was from other nations as well. The Kurds did have the YPG, which, we'll get into that, but they did have their hand in it. Now, were they the sole member? Now, it's a kind of like an enemy of an enemy is my friend type thing. The YPG and the Kurds hate the ISIS just as much as the U.S. and just as much as Turkey does, because they cause too much problems and they're trying to take over everything. It's the same thing as why all of the alliances hated Hitler. Okay, so we might have not had, we might have not been getting along with every other country, but when it comes to defeating Hitler at the point, we were friends. Now, this doesn't, we've been helping the YPG out for a long time, a lot longer than we were supposed to. We weren't even supposed to be in northern Syria at this point. We were supposed to withdraw a long time ago. And Trump was talking about this in early 2018 when he was saying that he wanted to go ahead and start drawing down the troops because he had basically said, hey, we have destroyed a lot of, the last stronghold of the caliphate. And this is true. And the YPG actually did assist in destroying the last part in I believe is northwestern Syria, where the last stronghold of the caliphate was. So does that mean ISIS is completely destroyed? Absolutely not. It doesn't mean ISIS is completely destroyed. There's still factions. There's always going to be factions of ISIS. There's always going to be factions of extreme fundamentalism out there. And there's no way to destroy that. And if the mass media would just be honest about that and say, hey, if we want to be in an endless war, that's fine. We have Afghanistan. We're in an endless war, just a never-ending war in Afghanistan. But let's go ahead and start a never-ending war in Syria too. And that way, we can just pump as much money as possible into this war machine, and it'll just never end. And we'll just end up making everything worse. Okay, so that's point number 2. Point number 3 is that the YPG, and I really think that everyone that's listening to this really needs, if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you do, great. If you don't, please do some more research on this, because the YPG is not as innocent as you would have them. The media would have you believe they are. Okay, they don't really ever talk about the YPG and their affiliation with the PKK. Now, the PKK is a Kurdish type of revolutionary group. They are a terrorist group that was so dignified, so designated. There I go coughing. Back in 1997 by the not only the UN but also the U.S. Okay, so they have killed tens of thousands of Turkish civilians. Okay, this is not what they want you to understand. They want to separate the YPG and the PKK, and in fact, what happened is that when we invaded, Iraq back in 2003. Remember that? After 2001, we went to Iraq looking for the weapons of mass destruction, all that kind of stuff, based on false information. We were never supposed to be there. This is just a natural offshoot of what happened as well. That's what happens when the U.S. gets involved. It actually starts separating what was actually going on and creating more monsters all over the place. So what happened was the PKK got displaced in Turkey, and they actually used this northern Syria corridor to go into not only Iraq, Iran, but Syria as well. And Syria was just basically an offshoot of the PKK, which ended up, I think it was called the PDK, and the YPG is basically the armed revolutionary army from that offshoot of the PKK. Okay, I know that sounds really confusing, but if you just imagine Turkey, if you imagine Turkey with the PKK, which is a revolutionary group, they've been fighting for the last 3 or 4 decades now. They are a terrorist organization. They've killed tens of thousands of people. They want to have their own settlement within Turkey and not get along with anyone. Okay. And this isn't something that just the UN or just Turkey has said. The U.S. has designated them as a terrorist organization as well. We are currently working with a terrorist organization, just as much as we worked with Al Qaeda. And again, when they were fighting the Russians, this is what the U.S. does. And I'm not saying it's a completely bad thing. We made that hard choice because we needed more allies to fight ISIS. ISIS was considered a larger threat than the PKK or the YPG at the time. So now that ISIS really isn't much of a threat at this point, then of course, we're going to draw back because we don't want to be in that civil war between Turkey and the PKK. And in the meantime, the Turks, who are a peaceful people that have been in, that make up 1/5 of the population of Turkey, they've been in there for a long time. And they've been having to do this. And there's nothing more than the Turkish people want is to stop the violence. And that is what the president of Turkey is trying to do. Now, the advisor to the president of Turkey was recently on Fox News talking about all this. Of course, Fox News is a conservative outlet. Okay. And I really just, this whole thing makes me cringe when I listen to it, because at first blush, when you listen to this, and I'll play it here in a second, you'll be like, oh, okay, well, Turkey is really just kind of, that's a really good look for Shepard Smith there. But Turkey we really had to understand what's really going on there. And I'll go ahead and play this here for you. I'm probably not going to play the whole thing, but we'll see how far we can get into it.
I guess you guys aren't going to stop, though, are you?
No, I mean, we're very determined because we have 2 objectives. One is to clear our border from this terrorist group, the YPG, which is equivalent to the PKK, which is a terrorist organization as recognized by the United States and the European Union. So if you... of course, Go ahead with your second objective. Yeah, and the second objective is to actually ensure the return of about 1 to 2 million Syrian refugees. We're already hosting 4 million of them in our country. And also, a part of this objective is because since the YPG grabbed a lot of land in northeast Syria, unfortunately, after the U.S. policy to arm them.
So hold on, I just want to understand this. Are you accusing the United States of helping terrorists? Because that seems to be where your logic is going.
Yes, I think it was a very ill-gotten policy.
Wait, hold on. Let's go back in a little bit of history, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm just going to leave. Sorry about that. I'm just going to leave that there. It's kind of a lengthy interview here. I think it goes on for about 6-7 minutes. I'm not going to sit here and just let it play. Now, you can actually go out and watch this. It's perfectly fine. They kind of go back and forth, and he just He just he tries his best to rip her apart, but she really does hold her own. Of course, in Fox News-like fashion, he says we're out of time. I'm not bashing Fox News, but I think they're getting a little bit too biased here. I think they're not really going after the absolute truth like they used to. And I think they're kind of evolving back into like a kind of a fake news type thing. And this is kind of concerning for me because I do like Fox News. But I do watch all types of news. I watch in MSNBC. I watch CNN. I watch them all. I read everything as much as I can. But this is one of the biggest problems with the mainstream media. They're not giving you the whole story. The U.S. is aiding and abetting a terrorist organization over in Syria. This is a fact. The fact is that the PKK is the armed group that is an offshoot of the PKK. This is common knowledge. This is what happened back in 2003, and it's a natural result of us going into Iraq in 2003. I believe it was. There was a lot of different operations that happened. Iraqi Freedom, Operation Awe, Destroy, all these different types of things that were going on at the time. But that was a natural problem, and that's a natural offshoot about what. The PKK actually went into all these other different countries when they were just primarily in Turkey doing their own revolution. Of course, there was coup attempts and stuff like that. And the president of Turkey has had enough of it. He doesn't want to have any more coup attempts. He doesn't want to have any more innocent Turkish civilians, and also Kurds die as a result of a lot of these terrorist attacks that are happening at the hands of the PKK. This is what's happening over and over. So I also found this another thing kind of interesting here. I'll go ahead and play this for you as well. 1 second.
Combined bounty of $12 million on their heads, offered by the U.S., who, among with many other nations, has long declared the PKK a terrorist organization. But the U.S. continues to distinguish the PKK leadership from the YPG, its Syrian branch. And this is when it began. In 2003, the U.S. invasion of Iraq led to the rise of the Iraqi Kurds. This prompted the PKK to re-strategize and declare it was shifting its focus from fighting an asymmetric war against Turkey to establish breakaway cantons in 4 countries. The PKK cadres are present in different countries under different names, like the PJAK in Iran, PCDK in Iraq, and the PYD in Syria. And the PYD's armed wing is the YPG. This is the root of the problem, as Turkey finds U.S. policy regarding the YPG in northern Syria hostile. Washington continues to support an armed group, the YPG, while it calls its parent organization, the PKK, a terror group. This is despite White House officials acknowledging on many occasions that they are different sides of the same coin.
Reports indicate that they're aligned or at least have substantial ties to the PKK. Is that true?
Yes, we have.
But this is how they're linked. YPG and PKK are connected both ideologically and organizationally. Ideologically, both groups are loyal to Abdullah Öcalan, the founder and leader of the PKK, something even YPG officials admit. All victories, developments, and gains made here are a result of a great battle based on its opinions and philosophy. If his ideological power hadn't been with us, we wouldn't know what to do in such a situation, says an anonymous YPG member. The YPG and PKK also share many banners, some of which prominently feature Öcalan. In 2017, after the YPG-led takeover of Raqqa, the self-proclaimed capital of Daesh, YPG militants displayed Öcalan posters in the main city square. But the link between the two organizations is not limited to ideology. The two groups are also closely knit in organization structure. YPG militants who came to Syria in 2012 received their training in PKK terror camps in Kandil Mountain. This base has been used by the terror organization since the 1990s. YPG and other PKK...
Okay, so I'm just going to leave that there. There was only like maybe a minute left of that. But that really just kind of gets at the heart of what we're talking about here, is that the YPG, and like I said, the YPG and the PKK are basically the same thing. They're just offshoots. That happened in 2003 they're actually the same thing. They're just offshoots. They're Syrian branches of the PKK. That's all they are. And we have been arming them and helping them this entire time. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because we are fighting a much worse enemy of ISIS. Okay, ISIS wants to take over the entire Islamic Muslim world. Of course, the Kurds don't want to have anything to do with that. They just want to have their own type of settlements. Also, they want to have their own settlements in Syria, Iraq, Iran, and also mainly in Turkey. Okay, they don't want to take over the entire world, but they are also a terrorist organization. They are bad people. They have been doing bad things to both the Turks and the Kurds for a while. Okay, just as much as ISIS, beheads their own kind, their own Muslims and stuff. The same thing happens with the PKK and the YPG. So that's really what I wanted to kind of get at, and this is something that really needs to be understood, is that the YPG and the PKK are known for a lot of the human rights violation. Now, we have our liberals over here in the U.S. that are talking, that they're marching in the streets about women and children in cages and stuff like that. Of course, they are not treated horribly in those detention cages. However, the YPG, the beloved YPG, and the people, the terrorist organization that we are abandoning right now because we are such horrible people, they have been known for a lot of human rights violations, including the recorded detention of 3,000 civilians, including over 600 children and 172 women, which includes a lot of different bad things that have happened, including rape, including murder, including beheadings, and all kinds of just horrible human rights violations that have happened since July 2012, according to the report. When the PKK and YPG took control of some Syrian provinces, the SNHR team recorded, that's the Human Rights Association, recorded detention of almost 3,000 civilians, including 600 children, 172 women. And that's the YPG is a Syrian offshoot of the terror group PKK. The latter has been responsible for the deaths of nearly 40,000 people in Turkey, including many women, children, and infants for more than 30 years. They have killed women, children, and infants, okay? These are not very nice people. I understand that war is hard, but there are rules to war. You don't kill women and children and infants. This is not what people do. This is not even in the midst of war. Okay, so we have been helping these people out for a while now. It's time to move on. What is Turkey really trying to do? They are trying to create peace over there. That is why their whole operation in this whole safety zone, which is a 20-mile deep zone in northeast Syria, they are trying to cut off the route of a lot of the PKK terrorism cells from going between Turkey, Iraq, Syria, Iran, all of those different types of things, where they can actually, form bigger cells and do more damage. Okay, that is what Turkey is trying to avoid, and that's why they're saying, hey, you're helping the terrorist group that has been killing tens of thousands of our civilians for the last 30 to 40 years. What if the tables were turned? What if Turkey was actually helping other terrorist organizations that were killing people on our side? We would probably have a problem with that too. But we're talking about what's going on now. Now, we have to get out of Syria. We can't have a never-ending war over there. We already have one in Afghanistan. It just cannot keep going on and on. And now I'm already 23 minutes into this, and I could talk forever about this, but that's the main thing I really wanted to get across today, is that this whole thing with Trump and him getting the troops out, it is all a big farce. He's been talking about this for a while now. We've been over there probably 400% longer than we probably should have been. It's time to get out. It's time to stop the endless meddling in the Middle East. Okay, Turkey has been talking about doing this for a long time, about creating a safe zone to cut off the influx of the PKK terrorism into all this different stuff, so they can actually centralize their focus on the PKK inside of Turkey. Okay, I hope that has helped out a little bit. If I would suggest that anytime something like this happens, you really need to do as much research as possible. Go out to all different sources, do as much research, go back in time, look at things that have happened in the past. Try to tie it together as much as possible, because if you don't, then you will be at risk of thinking of just whatever the mass media wants you to believe at that point. Okay, until next time, this is Joe with Simple Life Show.